System Concepts, Article 17, 4 Phases of Desire. Our spiritual desire evolves through 4 phases before the barrier. Each phase is in opposition to the previous phase. This means that a person on phase 2 will disagree with the implementation of a person on phase 3. Phase 1, unformed. We are all born into phase 1, where we have a desire to receive pleasure through feeling. This is where we are very mature, and while we might amass many concepts and knowledge, we are clueless as to how they fit together and relate to each other. Here's a quote. In Kabbalistic terms, the existence of a desire to bestow without a desire to receive is called the root stage, or stage 0. The root stage is immediately followed by its mandatory offshoot, stage 1, the desire to receive, which is permeated with the abundance given to it by the root, the desire to bestow. It may appear in the form of hot versus cold, dry versus wet, small versus big, centrifugal versus centripetal, energy versus matter, etc. But they all stem from the primordial opposites, giving and receiving. From Chapter 2, The Core Desires, Genesis, from the book Self-Interest vs. Altruism, The Global Error by Rav Michael Lightman. This phase is where we are clueless about what we really want or how to even reach what we want. Our desires tend to splint into multiple goals. Every time we fail to make ourselves happy, it advances us without awareness until we reach a certain intensity, different for each person, and we evolve to phase 2. This phase is all about the self as a separate desire. It cannot think about anybody else's desire. Phase 2, chaos. When we enter phase 2, we reach the conclusion that something is wrong with our repeated process of search and desire. We join a spiritual society that convinces us that the problem is that we are receiving pleasure directly. It tells us that the solution is to bestow feeling to others, apart from basic necessities. We evolve in this phase by learning Kabbalah and doing various society activities. Here's a quote. The result of the meeting between the two desires in stage 1 is stage 2. Here is where the actual interaction between the desires truly begins. But stage 2 is more than just a new desire. In wanting to give, stage 2 is admitted into an entirely new state of being. Because it no longer wishes to receive but to bestow, it must have someone upon whom to bestow. Thus, to be like its creator, a giver, stage 2 must act positively and favorably towards others. Now we can see why nature's initiating force is the desire to give and not the desire to receive. Concisely capturing the essence of that concept is Bala Sulam's Kabbalistic definition of altruism. In 1940, he published a paper titled The Nation. In it he writes, the altruistic force, the desire to give, is like centrifugal waves, an outward aiming force which flows from within outwardly. From Chapter 2, The Core Desires, Genesis, from the book Self-Interest vs. Altruism, The Global Error by Rav Michael Lightman. This is when we shift from the unformed phase to the chaos phase. We can't understand what is not working. We try our best to align ourselves to altruism without self-benefit. We have ascents and descents, but we spend more and more time with the society. We feel more and more pressure from people inside and outside the society, fighting for our time. When this tension reaches a certain intensity, we join a group inside the spiritual society that purifies our concepts and helps us handle the balance between our physical and spiritual desires. When we advance enough in the group with scrutinies, observations, and discernments, we reach phase 3. Phase 3, darkness. When we enter phase 3, we are deep inside a spiritual group, part of a spiritual society. Even though the group tries to align to the spiritual society, the dichotomy between the phases causes tension to increase. Our goal is that we want to reach to our future state. We want to empower each other. Our descents are targeted towards the goal and not towards physical affairs. Here's a quote. As Ashlag has stated, the evolution of desires, which hang down by cause and effect, is mandatory, adhering to fixed, determined rules. The next mandatory step is for stage 2 to start giving, since this is what it wants to do. But in stage 2, the newly made desire to give has a problem to solve. It wishes to give, but all that exists besides itself, the desire to receive with its 2 stages, is the desire to give that created it. Therefore, the only thing that stage 2 can give to its creator is its willingness to receive. In other words, it will receive, just as in stage 1, but with the intention to give pleasure to the root, the creator. This inverted modus operandi, where the act is reception, but the intention is to give, is a completely new concept, and hence merits a new name, stage 3. From Chapter 2, The Core Desires, Genesis, from the book Self-Interest vs. Altruism, The Global Era, by Rav Michael Lyman. This is where we use our ego and actually receive self-benefit of knowledge and understanding on the path to align ourselves with our future state. We feel a need to share our experience with other students on the path to spirituality. Phase 4, Spirit. We reach this phase when it is clear what is the goal, that the goal is to become the creator, to reach our future state. This is all we desire in life. We are using our ego to its fullest potential before the barrier. Our descents are more targeted. We are aware how to use the friends to activate ourselves correctly between our descents and ascents. Here's a quote. When stage 3 begins to receive because it wishes to please the root, it realizes that the more it receives, the more it pleases its maker, the root. In consequence, it begins to wish to receive more and more and more. Finally, it wishes to receive everything, just as in stage 1, thus reawakening the whole of its desire to receive. This self-evoked total desire to receive is called stage 4. Yet there is a fundamental difference between stage 1 and stage 4, relation to the giver. Stage 1 does not relate to the giver, only of the abundance. As soon as it realizes there is a desire to give that created it, it wishes to be like the giver, and this initiates stage 2. Stage 4 realizes not only the giver's existence, but also of the giver's benevolence and primacy, since it is the desire to give that initiated creation. And being a complete desire to receive, stage 4 wishes to receive not just the abundance that stage 1 receives, but the primacy status of the root. However, to receive such a status, stage 4 must be creator-like, and it is not. Instead, it is a conscious desire to receive everything, omnipotence, omniscience, and even the nature of the creator. Anything less than that would be incomplete, since it would not be precisely identical to the creator. From Chapter 2, The Core Desires, Genesis, from the book Self-Interest vs. Altruism in the Global Era, by Rav Michael Lyman. Each phase is built on the previous phases. They are layered on top of each other as different states experienced simultaneously. When we reach enough intensity of desiring to reveal that we are the creator, we pass the barrier. It's important to remember that it's not the actions that advance us. The discernments, observations, and scrutinies build the vessels of desire inside us to reach the internal power that we need. Each phase includes all phases within itself. In phase 1 of desire, called unformed, both the goal and, of course, the means to reach it are abstract and lack details and concrete definitions. In phase 2 of desire, called chaos, the goal becomes more detailed, but the means to get there is still abstract. In phase 3 of desire, called darkness, the goal becomes concrete, and the means to get there becomes detailed. In phase 4, called spirit, both the goal and the means not only become concrete, but unify into a single emotional concept. Then we pass the barrier to feel that we are the creator, even if in a small degree. And here's the workshop question. What is the difference between the goal of phase 2 and 3? Daniel.
The goal of phase 2, he wants to be like the creator. The goal in phase 3, he already knows that he wants, in phase 2, he wants to act like the creator in his will to receive. And in phase 3, he wants to become the creator.
Jenny.
Yes, and to add to that, in phase two, the goal is unity, annulment. You're zero. The friend is looked as already corrected. Total annulment, equivalence across the board. In phase three, you realize that you need to be an individual, and coming from phase two, you need to learn to become the individual that wants to obtain total adhesion, absolute internal power from the creator. So you need to clean concepts, all the dirty concepts that you acquired and you made part of you in phase two need to be cleaned, and so much so that you don't recognize even what needs to be cleaned, but the group helps. Next.
Mary.
In phase two, you are with people who want to bestow and annul, like Ginny said, and really make efforts to connect and be a zero. And in phase three is when you realize you can't, and you wonder, why, and clean concepts and work with other people who want to make progress and advance. Next.
Mark.
Wow, well said. There's not a lot to add to that. Phase two is a group phase where I need to be bonded to the group, and my only desire is to give, to try to bestow. And I get frustrated in that because I know that this is impossible. We move on to phase three, where there's a more defined goal, and it's more emotional. It's less about actions, it's more about emotion. Thank you.
Moshe.
Yeah, phase two is altruism without self-benefit, right? It's trying to bestow in the will to receive, which is impossible. So in phase three, in phase two, it realizes, at the end of phase two, it realizes I can't bestow unless I have the will to bestow. So phase three is about sort of building that desire to acquire that quality of bestowal, and that's sort of that's kind of what it's trying. It's trying to receive now internal power, receive that quality of bestowal, and at the same time still trying to bestow externally, but unsuccessful at it.
Renee.
I think that stage two, when we come to the spiritual society, we come with this altruistic idea, and that, okay, everything's going to be better. And then we find in that process that, we're learning a lot more about ourselves and other people. And in phase three, I feel like you're really like doubling down on the desire to control your world, to make things the way that you want them, to realize that, as Moshe said, we cannot bestow in phase two. And I think that even in phase three, there's a chaos, there's a darkness in trying to find our way. And that involves cleaning our concepts and trimming the fat, I think, so to speak. At least that's how I feel like it has been for me.
Robin.
Phase two, the goal is to bestow. Everybody annuls to one another. They have projects at conferences. They want to disseminate. The goal is to cross the barrier together in connection, and that doesn't work. So phase 3 is an awakening. Comes where you realize that's just not going to work. You need more. You need to be able to receive, and you still want to bestow. So you want to receive, so and increase your ability to move closer to the creator, to become the creator. And so you're receiving to try to bestow, but you haven't let go of that yet. It's kind of foreshadowing probably of the barrier. And so you're trying to clean your concepts, you're trying to get there.
Maria writes, Phase 3 has more detailed means for achieving bestowal. One knows that cleaning concepts leads from external bestowal to internal bestowal. Phase 2, dependency. Phase 3, independent on each other. And Caesar writes, Phase 2 wants bestow filling, and Phase 3 wants clean concepts and internal power across the barrier and keep on advancing. When we come to Phase 2, which is the spiritual society, we're basically taught and given the trademark of the society, which is altruism without self-benefit. And at the beginning, it sounds great. It sounds, the creator bestows, we should bestow as well. Yes, the creator is different. The creator is the quality of bestowal and we're the quality of reception. But still, we should be doing the same sort of direction with our desires. And at the beginning, it works out and everything's great. But then slowly, what happens is you either unconsciously or consciously see that your fuel of phase 1 starts to diminish because you're not giving it the attention it needs. It starts to drain and drain and drain. When it drains to a point where you're just like, you just have no more sustenance to keep you going, that's normally when you reach phase 3, where you understand that you do need to use your will to receive as it was designed, which is to receive, as we saw in the quotes, and that, but what you're actually lacking is not external power. It's not you're lacking food, money, and stuff like that. But rather, you're lacking power. You're lacking energy to get things done. So then you have this sort of play between wanting to continue bestow like you were doing in phase 2, but now you're working on wanting to receive internal power, wanting to have your concepts clean. Like in phase 2, they don't clean concepts because the whole idea is altruism without self-benefit. And even cleaning your own concepts is self-benefit. And when we shift to phase 3, we're very interested in constantly cleaning our concepts. And we just have that shift from moving from actions to discernments. The next question. Why is attention important between the phases? Daniel.
I don't know. I think it's because of the suffering. Like it brings us to a point of suffering in which we look how to escape from it. That's my guess.
Jeffrey.
Sorry, friends, I'm not ready yet. I'll be back in a few minutes.
No problem. Jenny.
The tension is, it propels us. And initially, the tension, it's an opportunity to discern. And initially in phase 2, it's to rise above. It's the words that we're told and what we express together. It's be the tension gives us the desire to rise above our ego because we're feeling the pain of otherwise not rising above the ego. So we continue to try that. And again, we realize that we can't. So when we get to phase 3, The tension is the push. It's the push behind to keep us moving forward. And then in that phase, it's the emotional tension that motivates us, moves us forward. And then in the later phases, phase 4s, the tension is that we're not feeling the push anymore, and that we need, and so that again, that propels us. If our true desire is to move forward and to advance, then that lack of tension actually creates a new kind of a tension that I need to find a way to desire this more again. So along the way, the tension works a little differently, but again, it's to give us the opportunity to advance.
Mary.
Tension's important because it pushes you out of one phase and pulls you toward another, and keeps you in the next future state or phase. It pushes you away from the previous phase, and you use it to internalize it and use it as fuel to keep on the path and continue to include the previous phase. Next.
Mark.
Tension is important because without tension, I wouldn't leave phase 1 or I wouldn't leave phase 2. Without tension, I would be fat and happy and lazy and fulfilled, and I would stay wherever I was at. I wouldn't move, I wouldn't budge an inch. I need tension. I have to have tension in order to, and it can be tension within a phase or tension between the phases, especially between the phases, in order to want to move, in order to want to progress. So this tension is vital. Thank you.
Moshe.
Right, and the only way you can move because of this tension is because the tension itself provides contrast between two opposing states. And the reason you're moving is because you're seeing that contrast between those two states. And that's why it's actually there for you. Otherwise, you'd be blinded completely in one state and wouldn't see it for what it is. And once you have an opposing force to provide that tension, can you actually see it? And it gets you to move.
Renee.
I don't know. I keep thinking of the analogy of a butterfly. When it's in the cocoon, eventually the cocoon becomes too small and too tight, and forces an equal force against the cocoon to even a greater force to leave that stage, that cocoon stage, to reveal itself in the next stage. And that if it wasn't for that tension and for that cocoon becoming too small and too tight, that next stage would not reveal itself.
Robin.
Right. Tension is like the spiritual ground we walk on. It's the foundation in which to advance. And I think it comes probably from the awakening of the point in the heart at different times. And it is the platform that motivates us.
Maria writes, tension is necessary because there's an oppositeness between adjacent phases, and that tension can be used to go from one phase to the next. If there's no tension, one is horizontally advancing. And if there's no tension, one can possibly plateau. And if no tension is perceived, then one can observe if one needs to increase or correctly target aim more intensely. And Caesar writes, each phase are opposite of each other's. The tension of building by scrutinies from bottom up. Since those phases are on top of each other, they are like mirrors facing each other, reflecting both sides of the phase. The reason why the tension is important is because when we're in the phase two, when we're in the spiritual society, and our sense of self is a spiritual society, and we feel like we are not in the society, we are part of the society. When that phase three starts to creep into us, and that normally happens always in a darkness or a spirit before, so it's like, you know, in 2.3, which is the darkness of the society, and 2.4, which is the spirit of the society, it really exposes us to the limitation of the society, and it can cause us to cry, it can cause us to be in pain, and it's very unsettling. And the only way we can actually get out of that is by cleaning our concepts. And when we clean our concepts enough, then we can move to phase three, where we can move our sense of self to where it actually belongs, which is in the next phase. And all the time we're feeling tension, it's always because there's a concept that is bothering us, that is stopping us and causing that dichotomy. And when we clean our concepts correctly, then you're meant to reach a state of peace where you actually understand how it's okay to be in phase two and phase three, of feeling the sense of self, to be in phase three. And until you do that, you just constantly feel the pain that you're not getting sustenance from where you are, because you should be in a higher phase, and you're not relating in that correctly, and you're not cleaning those concepts that are needed to be cleaned. Third question. How can we help each other grow to higher phases of desire? Daniel.
The cleaning of concepts, of course. Yeah, that.
Jenny.
Well, a couple of things. Cleaning concepts for ourselves, but also there for each other to help clean concepts. Sharing progress, sharing states, at least in phase three, and then and above. And also, when we share our states, there is an envy that develops, and it's a good envy, because all of us, if we're here because we truly want to adhere, the envy is good for us because it's a motivation. It's like a pull as opposed to a push, maybe. So again, we're here for all those things. Next.
Mary.
And like Jenny was saying, envy, and when we listen to other people that are on the same path, trying hard to achieve the same goal, we are inspired by each other, and especially higher perceptions. They just kind of draw us forward when we hear people speak from a different perception. It draws us forward, and we want that. So in addition to everything Jenny said, jealousy, envy.
Mark.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly with what's just been said. This envy, an example, to look and to see what's possible, to see the movement within the group, to know without a doubt that this isn't fantasy, this isn't floating around in the sky, this is concrete, this is real. But that optimism, that potential is seen, and we need to be an example of that. We need to be an example of that for those behind us, and those ahead of us need to be an example for us. So it's all of those things. It's envy, it's jealousy, it's whatever you want to use, but this is the fuel that propels us forward. Thank you.
Moshe.
I love how the system is built, how, everybody needs each other to advance. Where, an upper needs a lower to advance, and a lower needs an upper to advance. just set up perfectly that we always need someone to advance, and it's just set up perfectly. Again, yeah, envy is one way of moving forward, I guess, from the lower to the upper, right? Sort of, that envy, and then the upper needs the lower because the lower provides a way for the upper to express himself clearer and sort of, I guess you could say, question the upper's sort of attainment or, knowledge, or attainment is a better word, through expression. And sort of both parties need each other. And I think if we just utilize it that way, I think we all will grow together.
Renee.
I don't know. Concepts are easier for me to understand, I guess, when I think of analogies. But I think of the simple task of walking. It takes two legs to cover distance, and that's the only thing that comes to my mind. We need each other on a fundamental level, maybe more than we even think we understand. We have an idea of, we need the friends, we need the. I think it's even much more deeper than what I can express.
Robin.
I really agree with everything everybody said. The way we help is by gathering together and sharing where we are and what we are with our desire, and the tension is there. It's inherent in it all. The contrasts are all inherent in the system, and it provides the tension so that we can grow. The envy, the differences, yet the same desire with everyone creates this way of helping each other, I think.
Maria writes, cleaning concepts, envy, observing, objective versus subjective, helping each other constantly identify our states and phases, teach each other how to get out of descents and ascents, always remind each other that we don't just believe, but that one must have a new perception. We reveal each other's pain point. And Caesar writes, reminds them that always there's a great goal to achieve and nobody is ahead or behind, step by step, barrier by barrier, to independent on each other and internal power. One of the reasons why we need the environment so much to actually grow is because even though we think we have a desire to actually pass a barrier, it's just not revealed to us that there's just so much immature concepts that are blocking our way. And that's precisely why we come to the environment. If it was just my desire and I didn't need to clean concepts, or I could just do it by myself, I wouldn't need the environment. And the whole reason we need the environment is to really give us that emotional support and give us the intellectual support and combine them together to actually give us solid discernments for us to advance. Like the whole way before and after the barrier is collecting discernments. And a person might think, I can just do it alone. And the reason we can't do it alone is because we don't actually want to pass the barrier. If we wanted to pass the barrier, we would have already passed the barrier. So the only reason someone hasn't passed the barrier is because there's still something tying him to his current perception, to his current phase. And the only way to get out of that catch-22 is to connect with other people that they might be locked in their desires, but there's sort of allowance to help each other. So even though we're designed that we can't actually help ourselves, but when we actually try to help each other for helping ourselves, then that is when it really works. And then the cleaning of the concepts actually internalizes and cleans us and just really allows us to move forward correctly. There's a table, actually, for this article. Just a second. So we've got here, we've got the phase 1, which is unformed, and the process is abstract, and the goal is also abstract. Then we have phase 2, which is chaos, the spiritual society, where the process is abstract, but the goal is more detailed. And then we have phase 3, where it's darkness, the group, where the process is detailed, and the goal is concrete. And then finally, we have phase 4, spirit, individual, where both the goal and the process are concrete and unified.
We also know that each phase has sub-phases. So, for instance, in spirit unformed, the process and the goal, how are they?
So this is, of course, doing on a macro level. When you enter 4.1, for example, both the process and the goal are concrete and unified. What changes is that your ego starts to really show itself and expose itself. Well, beforehand, it's more like in hiding. And this is very important because you need that intense ego, you need that intense will to receive, to want to receive the primacy of the creator. We want to receive the quality of bestowal. And so the changes that happen in phase 4 is where, on one hand, you're more mature than ever before, you're in discernments, but on the other hand, your ego is really exposing itself and really being hungry and wanting to advance, but not knowing to all the time realign itself to the environment. And that's why it's critical when you're in phase 4 to have an individual to constantly realign you and clean you and make sure you plateau for as little as possible. Yes, Mark.
Maria wrote a question in the chat. I'm not sure if you're able to see it or not, but she asked, can you explain unified, please?
So what it means by unified is if beforehand we have the process and the goal, we think they're different, they're separate. That is, I have a process to do, and there's a goal to reach. In phase 4, they become unified. That means that the process is equal to the goal. And one of the ways to explain this is, if, for example, Mark gives me a job. He says, Zakai, do this and this for me, and I'll give you money. So we have the goal, which is money, and we have a process, which is the work I have to do. Right? And I come to Mark and I say, Mark, tell me what I need to do. You tell me what I need to do. That's the process. And I say, what am I going to get out of it? You tell me, I'm going to get $100. That's the goal. Right? So the process is separate from the goal. In phase 4, which is concrete and unified, it's when you would say, I'm going to train you for you to become better at a certain skill. So, for example, you're going to teach me fishing. So the goal is for me to know how to fish. Then the process where I'm learning about fishing is the goal. That is, it's not that I do one thing and then I come to you at the end and say, so what am I getting? You're like, I taught you how to fish. That was the goal. So now you know how to fish. Where the process and the goal become one. And that's why we talk about empowerment. When you empower someone to do something, when you teach somebody a skill, you're unifying the process and the goal together. Because unlike with a job, where I could say, Mark told me to do work for 2 weeks, and I lied to him, and I only worked for 1 week, and he still gives me the $100. Because the process and the goal are separate, I can cheat or lie in the process and still reach the goal. But when the process and the goal are one, I can't cheat. I can't sort of cheat myself to learn how to fish if I don't learn how to fish. If I don't do the process of empowering myself, I won't reach the goal of empowerment. And this is very important because what happens in the previous phases, we think we can cut corners. We think we can skip phases. We think, I'll just do this and then I'll reveal the creator now. It's like, no, there's a process. You have to go through all the phases because those are exactly what build your vessel that often you need when you enter spirituality. And that's why you can't skip those phases, because you need that vessel to keep you grounded, so that when you get your screen and you go above your vessel, you still have the grounding ego, even though your sense of self is above it. What do you think of the article?
So in this last answer you gave, the process and the goal is to empower others.
To empower ourselves. You know, one of the homework, you could say, that I normally give to someone who's in 4.3 is it goes something like the following. I say to them, you're not the will to receive, but you're told that you have the intention to receive. So start doing things consciously with the intention to receive. And they're like, yeah, that makes total sense. Let me try. And then they try and they fail. They're not very good at it. They're not actually able to do things with the intention to receive. They constantly have to cover it with the clothing of bestowal. And one of the reasons this is important is, one, to actually show that they were just very gullible in thinking that, oh yeah, of course I'm doing everything for myself. And one of the ideas of this homework is to basically reveal to them that when we say for self-benefit, who is the self that we're benefiting? If we think the self is the body, right, which is not our true self, then that's a broken intention, because that's what it means in order to receive, that we're giving to our reality, that our goal is to allow us to get certain things done in reality. A correct intention, which is what we try to build before the barrier, and we get it when we pass the barrier, is that what I really need to do is to bestow to myself, to my true self, to bestow to my internal power within me, which is the creator within me. And that's what it means to bestow, with the intention in order to bestow. The problem in phase 2, for example, phase 1 and phase 2, is that thinks the creator is outside of them. And then it thinks to bestow to the creator is to actually give to externality. And in order to receive is to give to myself, to my internality. And it's the total opposite. If I'm giving to reality, that means I'm not actually bestowing, I'm receiving. Because I'm wanting situations in my 5 senses to be better, for there to be peace on earth, to me to sort of have better experiences in reality. And in order to bestow means to actually improve the way I can handle situations. So I don't want the situations to change. I want for me to be able to have the power, the internal power, to be able to handle situations. And that's the difference between in order to receive, which is actually to go outside, and the true in order to bestow, which is actually to increase our internal power. Caesar asks, phase 2 wants to bestow. Is it not the same saying that it does want internal power? No, phase 2 does not want internal power. Phase 2, in phase 1, it wants to receive external filling. In phase 2, it says, what you actually need to do is not receive external filling, but bestow external filling. That's what phase 2 wants to do. Phase 3 starts to have a game where it says, okay, let's continue bestowing external filling. I still need to make people feel better with themselves and stuff, but let me start actually empowering myself. Let me start actually increasing my internal power. And then finally in phase 4, you basically understand what really is needed is just for me to empower myself, because the result of me empowering myself will be that I'll have better situations. Because if I can handle situations better, then my life will be better. And that is what I'm lacking. I'm not lacking better situations in reality. I'm lacking the power to handle those situations. And all the pain that we have before the barrier is just constantly realizing that what we really have to do is start taking care of ourselves, and that we've never actually been taking care of ourselves. We're told in the society that everything we do is in order to receive. But the funny thing is that we're not actually doing it in order to receive to our real self. We're doing it to external circumstances, and we never take care of our true selves. We never take care of our true power. And that starts happening in phase 3, where you actually start giving time and effort and discernments to actually empowering yourself, using the environment. You use the environment to clean your concepts, to empower yourself.
So when a person reaches phase 3, there is no more tension between phase 2 and like there's no more tension. He doesn't feel more tension when he goes to the spiritual society.
He feels tension, but it's a different tension. When you're still in phase 2, you feel tension towards the society because you feel you're part of the society. When you're in phase 3, you're already above the society, and you actually look down on the society. And that dichotomy is what actually causes you the tension. Because they're not actually fighting with you very much, but what's actually happening is you're looking at them and you're like, why are they not advancing? Why am I advancing? And that whole dichotomy between in phase 2, where the society is the begin all and end all, and then suddenly to have a phase inside the society. It's not like phase 3 is outside, like you have the group and you have the society. Rather, you have the society, and inside suddenly you find depth, and there's a phase 3 within it, which is just much more deeper than what the phase 2 society, where they just talk all day about generic concepts and quotes and just saying we just need connection. It's all about connection. It's all about love and unity, and there's no actual depth in those concepts. So when we move to phase 3, our attention becomes towards the goal and less towards the actual society.
I particularly like these articles, not because there's any revolutionary or new material here, but it just seems to solidify or clarify things. It makes it more concise for me, and today was wonderful, Kai. I really did like the material today. And I don't know if the group would want, but I wouldn't mind if you did a quick read-through again on this material.
Yeah, I can read it again. Let's read it again. Or maybe somebody else wants to read. Mark, do you want to read?
Certainly, I can start. Number 17, the 4 phases of desire. Our spiritual desire evolves through 4 phases before the barrier. Each phase is in opposition to the previous phase. This means that a person on phase 2 will disagree with the implementation of a person on phase 3. Phase 1 is unformed. We're all born into phase 1, where we have a desire to receive pleasure through filling. This is where we are very immature, and while we may amass many concepts and knowledge, we are clueless as to how they fit together and relate to each other. And I believe this next portion is a quote. In Kabbalistic terms, the existence of a desire to bestow without a desire to receive is called the root stage, or stage 0. The root stage is immediately followed by its mandatory offshoot, stage 1, the desire to receive, which is permeated with the abundance given to it by the root, the desire to bestow. It may appear in the form of hot versus cold, dry versus wet, small versus big, centrifugal versus centripetal, energy versus matter, etc., these opposites. But they all stem from the primordial opposites, giving and receiving. Chapter 2, the core desires, Genesis. Rav Michael Lightman, self-interest versus altruism in the global era. Would somebody else care to read, or do you want me to continue?
Continue until phase 2, and then someone else can read phase 2.
Okay. This phase is where we are clueless about what we really want or how to even reach what we want. Our desires tend to splinter into multiple goals. Each time we fail to make ourselves happy, it advances us without awareness until we reach a certain intensity, and this is different for each person, and we evolve to phase 2. This phase is all about the self as a separate desire and cannot think about anybody else's desire.
Who's next?
I'll go. Phase 2, chaos. When we enter phase 2, we reach the conclusion that something is wrong with our repeated process of search and desire. We join a spiritual society that convinces us that the problem is that we are receiving pleasure directly. It tells us that the solution is to bestow filling to others apart from basic necessities. We evolve in this phase by learning Kabbalah and doing various society activities. The result of the meeting between the two desires in stage 1 is stage 2. Here is where the actual interaction between the desires truly begins. But stage 2 is more than just a new desire. In wanting to give, stage 2 is admitted into an entirely new state of being. Because it no longer wishes to receive but to bestow, it must have someone upon whom to bestow. Thus, to be like its creator, a giver, stage 2 must act positively and favorably towards others. Now we can see why nature's initiating force is the desire to give and not the desire to receive. Concisely capturing the essence of that concept is Baal Salam's Kabbalistic definition of altruism. In 1940, he published a paper titled The Nation. In it he writes, the altruistic force, the desire to give, is like centrifugal waves, an outward aiming force which flows from within outwardly. Chapter 2, The Core Desires, Genesis. Rev. Michael Layton, Self-Interest versus Altruism in the Global Era. This is when we shift from the unformed phase to the chaos phase. We can't understand what is not working. We try our best to align ourselves to altruism without self-benefit. We have a sense and descents where we spend more and more time with the society. We feel more and more pressure from people inside and outside the society fighting for our time. But when this tension reaches a certain intensity, we join a group inside the spiritual society that purifies our concepts and helps us handle the balance between our physical and spiritual desires. When we advance enough in the group with scrutinies, observations, and discernments, we reach phase 3.
Who's next?
I can.
Go for it.
Phase 3, darkness. When we enter phase 3, we are deep inside a spiritual group, part of a spiritual society. Even though the group tries to align to the spiritual society, the dichotomy between the phases causes tension to increase. Our goal is that we want to reach our future state. We want to empower each other. Our descents are targeted towards the goal and not towards, sorry, I can't see.
Physical affairs.
And not towards physical affairs. As Oshlag stated, the evolution of desires, which hang down by cause and effect, is mandatory, adhering to fixed, determined rules. The next mandatory step is for stage 2 to start giving, since this is what it wants to do. But in stage 2, the newly made desire to give has a problem to solve, wishes to give. But all that exists besides itself, the desire to receive with its 2 stages, is the desire to give that created it. Therefore, the only thing that stage 2 can give to its creator is its willingness to receive. In other words, it will receive just as in stage 1, but with the intention to give pleasure to the root, the creator. This inverted modus operandi, where the act is reception, but the intention is to give, is completely new. Is a completely new concept and hence merits a new name, Stage 3. Chapter 2, The Core Desires, Genesis. Rob Michael Lightman, Self-Interest versus Altruism in the Global Era. This is where we use our ego and actually receive self-benefit of knowledge and understanding of the path to align ourselves with our future state. We feel a need to share our experience with other students on the path to spirituality.
Who's next?
I'll read.
Go for
it. Phase 4, Spirit. We reach this phase when it is clear what is the goal. The goal is to become the creator, to reach our future state. This is all we desire in life. We are using our ego to its fullest potential before the barrier. Our descents are more targeted. We are aware how to use the friends to activate ourselves correctly between our descents and ascents. When stage 3 begins to receive because it wishes to please the root, it realizes the more it receives, the more it pleases its maker, the root. In consequence, it begins to wish to receive more and more and more. Finally, it wishes to receive everything, just as in stage 1, thus reawakening the whole of its desire to receive. The self-evoked desire to receive is called stage 4. Yet, there is a fundamental difference between stage 1 and stage 4, relation to the giver. Stage 1 does not relate to the giver, only of the abundance. As soon as it realizes there is the desire to give that created it, it wishes to be like the giver, and this initiates stage 2. Stage 4 realizes not only the giver's existence, but also of the giver's benevolence and primacy, since it is the desire to give that initiated creation, and being a complete desire to receive, stage 4 wishes to receive not just the abundance that stage 1 receives, but the primacy status of the root. Thank you. However, to receive such a status, stage 4 must be creator-like, and it is not. Instead, it is a conscious desire to receive everything, omnipotence, omniscience, and even the nature of the creator. Anything less than that would be incomplete, since it would not be precisely identical to the creator. Chapter 2, The Core Desires, Genesis, Self-Interest versus Altruism in the Global Era, Rav Michael Lightman. Each phase is built upon the previous phases. They are layered on top of each other as different stages experienced simultaneously. When we reach enough intensity of desiring to reveal that we are the creator, we pass the barrier. It's important to remember that it's not the actions that advance us. The discernments, observations, and scrutinies build the vessels of desire inside us to reach the internal power that we need. Each phase includes all phases within itself. In phase 1 of desire called unformed, but the goal and, of course, the means to reach it are abstract and lack details and concrete definitions. In phase 2 of desire called chaos, the goal becomes more detailed, but the means to get there is still abstract. In phase 3 of desire called darkness, the goal becomes concrete, and the means to get there becomes detailed. In phase 4 called spirit, both the goal and the means not only become concrete, but unify into a single emotional concept. Then we pass the barrier to feel that we are the creator, even if in a small degree. Thank you.
Very nice. How did it feel to read it a second time?
I liked it even better the second time. It doesn't, for me, and I probably shouldn't say this, but for me it doesn't seem to carry the same power when you don't read it. There's something about when you read it that it's empowering, but I was still able to follow it. And the thing that stuck out this last reading was the stage 4, that it's not based on actions. All I ever learned or all I ever knew in stage 2 or phase 2 was actions. This action, the next action, let's do this, let's do that, and it's helter skelter, but action, action, action. So this is an eye opener for stage 4.
The thing is that actually those last 2 paragraphs are like generic. They're on all the phases, and the idea is that already in phase 2, to get out of that darkness of feeling that society limitation, to get to 2.4, which is cleaning concepts, you have to clean concepts. That means you have to start shifting slowly from continuing to doing the actions. You still do the actions throughout the entire way, even after the barrier. The difference is that your sense of what's important to you shifts from the actions becoming really important to you to becoming mundane. And the discernments you collect on the actions become important to you. Well, before they were mundane. So before it was all about the actions. And the discernments, I meant to collect discernments. I remember Rav saying something like that. And then afterwards it shifts where the actions are like, I remember Rav saying we have to do actions. And it's like, it's all about the discernments. What's my next phase? How do I advance? What's this? What's that? What's the concept I'm lacking? What am I plateauing? Am I not plateauing? What is what do I learn from this experience I just had? This person was nasty to me in the society. What do I need to learn from that? Why am I inviting these situations? Observing yourself from the side. All this becomes your colorful world. And the actions become black and white. So you basically go from where your discernments are black and white and your actions are colorful to your actions becoming black and white and your discernments become colorful.
That's like, it seems that on lessons, Rab only wants to maintain the phase 2 structure. So like in order to advance, like the most important sermons we get from this spiritual group.
The idea that the phases are laid on top of each other. So it's not like you reach phase 3 and then you leave spiritual society. You have to keep them all active. But the idea is your sense of self shifts. So even though you're still listening to the lessons and everything, it's gonna become less of a place for sustenance and filling, which it wasn't actually giving to you in phase 2, but you thought it would. It becomes a place for deficiencies, because that's what phase 2 is all about. Phase 2 is all about deficiencies. And then those deficiencies, those dirty concepts, then you bring them to phase 3, the group, for them to be cleaned. That is, if you're not in the society, then you've got nothing to clean when you come to the group. So you have to gain those dirty concepts. You have to hear the friends talk about, it's just about connection. It's just about us all being in equality. And you're hearing those dirty concepts, and that builds in you a desire to actually want to clean them for yourself. And you get them cleaned in the group. So the whole idea is that reality is perfect. And then you're like, well, it's not perfect. Look at all the things that are happening. But the idea is it's perfect in that everything is happening is for you to be able to use to advance. What you are lacking is priorities and relationships, how to understand what each phase is designed for. Phase 1 is not designed for your spiritual sustenance. Phase 1 is designed for your physical sustenance. It's for food, sex, family, money, honor, and knowledge. That's what phase 1 is all about, and that's what it's to provide you for. Phase 2 is to provide you for deficiencies. That's what phase 2 is designed for. It's designed for you not to go there being filled. It's designed for you to get there and feel lack, feel emptiness, feel frustration. That's what phase 2 is designed for. Because you're trying to bestow in the will to receive, but the will to receive can only receive, and you don't have the will to bestow. So that causes a deficiency. It causes a dichotomy and the tension you need, and that's precisely why it's very important to continue going to phase 2. If you leave phase 2, you won't get those deficiencies that you'll need then to clean when you go to phase 3, the group. Where in phase 3, the idea is it's about cleaning concepts, but it's about cleaning concepts about the process in general, about people in general, about the path in general. And then you have the individual phase that takes the concepts that it learned in the phase 3, but applies them to the person. It applies it so that the person can understand, okay, we learned about plateau, but am I plateauing? So in phase 3, you might hear the word plateau that you might not have heard before, but you're not going to be very good at applying it to yourself. You'll think, oh, others are plateauing. It can't be me. Oh, others have dirty concepts. It can't be me. And then you have the phase 4 individual that you work with that takes the concepts that you learned from phase 3 and applies them to each other. So you've got the success of phase 4, which is the individual, which is cleaning concepts and applying them to each other, is only because you have the phase 3 to get those clean concepts, only because you have those deficiencies from phase 2 that the spiritual society gives you, and only because things aren't working well for you in humanity. So you can see how the success in phase 4 is entirely dependent on how you're using phase 3, phase 2, and phase 1 for passing the barrier. I think we'll end here and into the after party.